Con il dottor Bhagat, che è il mio socio, parte della mia famiglia, come vi ho già anticipato da più di 15 anni, che vi darà una visione più generale del mercato a livello macroeconomico e a livello di opportunità di settori nei quali bisogna guardare con attenzione. Il suo intervento è in inglese, purtroppo anche se lavoriamo insieme da tanti anni non ha imparato l'italiano e questo è molto grave, però avete tutti una sua traduzione, se non sbaglio, nella vostra cartellina, quindi potete comunque seguirlo. So Girish, I think that you didn't learn Italian, not too much, but
I was wondering what you introduced about me. But
they have the translation of your so they can follow.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. My apologies for not speaking your language. I have an issue there. This presentation today I divided in two parts. The first part perhaps becomes irrelevant in the last 2 days, but nonetheless, given the peace, so-called peace, is not sure how long it will last or whether it is really stable. I thought we must redefine, because India was impacted by what happened in the Gulf. And when India economy is impacted, energy security is impacted, fertilizer and food security is impacted, trading in the world is impacted, it has an impact on the business. So I will be briefly touching upon those points. Second part of the presentation is giving you a macro view on where the economy is headed, what are the sectors which are growing, what are the opportunities emerging from the businesses, and I will directly and sharply focus on the actual opportunities that you can see and exploit. So I'm talking about these four things: energy security in the global event, fertilizers and food securities, trading in the world, and impact on the supply disruptions and sharp fuel rises on the country. In terms of the next one, please. I won't talk, there's data there which you can translate, but I'll just take highlights of these slides that I'm talking about. Important to note that India's dependency on energy security is still at about 85% from the Gulf region. Okay, India did diversify its energy sources from Russia, which was 2%, and has now moved up to 35 to 40%. Okay, this happened not just during the Gulf crisis, but it happened during the Ukraine crisis as well, because India did exploit that opportunity, did use that opportunity. There has been a lot of criticism from the European Union about India doing so, but the reality is India took that economic opportunity for the benefit of its own people and its own economy. And finally, much of the exports that imports that India did from Russia got refined and eventually got sold to the Europe, and therefore caused some amount of stability in the European prices. So in terms of the natural gas, also a dependency on the Gulf region is very high. And if you look at it, our energy imports are roughly about 170 to 200 billion annually. The price range because of the fluctuation of the oil prices, and our very vast dependency on Gulf region. What are the steps that India has taken? Essentially, as I said earlier, India did exponentially improve its Russian imports, and India has now started importing, diversifying its energy security from Gulf to Latin America, to Venezuela and the United States, as also Canada in the Gulf area. So this diversification is assisting us, but not quite in a manner. It's supporting us, and we have yet to come up. This energy security issue is being challenged, is being addressed in a variety of different ways. India is going whole hog on the solar energy, hydroelectric, and more importantly, we're going also on the small nuclear reactors. I'll talk about it a little later. Expectations are that by 2030, India will be energy self-sufficient. And that happens, that will be a very, very big statement. It will bring stability of domestic prices, stability of supply, and stability of business fortunes. In terms of the next one, fertilizers and food subsidy, fertilizer and food security, India is also dependent upon fertilizer imports to feed its, build its food stock and do its agriculture domain. the issue is not easily for us to substitute the LNG risk, so the price risk remains. We will continue to be importing LNG from the Gulf region to maintain our fertilizers and food security issue. Higher fertilizers in India are subsidized, and therefore this does cause pressure on the economic pressure on the fiscal discipline. The government cannot pass on and has not passed on the entire rise in the LNG prices down to the consumer. So the government has taken a hit on its fiscal situation and is likely to do that, continue to do that, because they are trying to control inflation at domestic level of legal food security. The good thing about food security is that India has a substantial food reserves as compared to most other countries. Over 1 year of food supplies are there. So worst case situation is that we will dip into our reserves, okay, and we have the breathing room. 1 year is a substantially long period. So far in this crisis, no, there was no evidence of food prices or fertilizer prices in the local market, except for marginal increase in the LNG prices. We have also started diversifying our imports of fertilizers from Saudi Arabia, Russia, Australia, and Canada. So diversification and abundance of food stock is holding India steady on the food security front. Trading in the world is really the change that is taking place. I won't go dwell much into it. My colleague Michael has already talked about the EU thing, but this picture kind of shows you the diversity, the vast diversity that India is presenting with free trade agreements or potential preferential trade agreements, call it whatever. We've gone from Australia, Canada, Latin America, neighboring countries all around in the world, selectively choosing countries for either preferential trade agreements or free trade agreements. And the deal with the European Union happens, it is likely to exponentially grow the Indian market in the terms of the trading side. When the trading improves, it's not just about our improvement in the reduction of current account deficit. What is also going to happen is acceptability of high price. When the duty structure changes, Michael talked about, duty structure changes and acceptability of foreign goods in the Indian country become acceptable. So there is that advantage of foreign goods being available, or Italian goods being available, manufactured in Italy, sold in India, because of the duty structures being contracted, and therefore it could be a good opportunity for businesses who want to go through a commercial line before they get into manufacturing line of the world. So what has India done in terms of the trading of the world? India has moved from broad multilateral trade agreements, which was the situation pre-2010, and are going to selective strategic FTAs with value chain alignment with very many countries and spread across the geography of the world. So in the sense that it is leading, these changes, these broad basing, is doing two things. It is one, improving bilateral relationships across the global region. It is, and more importantly, it is also leading us to one of the biggest issues in India. I'm going to address this in my PowerPoint here, is unemployment or generating of employment. So labor mobility is going to be one of the focal point of our free trade agreements and preferential trade agreements between India and the rest of the world. I just want to show you these two routes. And these are important things what India is going, diversification. India is now moving to China and moving to Europe through the Arctic on the left-hand side curve. It is moving through the Gulf region, land route through Saudi Arabia and UAE and into Europe. So the Hormuz Strait, the sea routes, which are often get choked through military disputes and other things, are being diverted. The Middle East IMEC corridor is going to be set up in the next 2 years. Okay. India's already positioned its oil reserves in the UAE. Okay. And in India's moving towards shipbuilding area, we don't have any icebreaker vessels. India doesn't own any one of them. And India is getting into that area of shipbuilding, icebreaker vessels, to move along the Arctic and bypass this whole conflict zone if the need arises. And also, if there are conflicts of, Russian sanctions, India will divert or will bypass the Russian sanctions. Instead of coming from the Europe, it will come around from the Arctic, along the Pacific side and into India. This is a significant departure and significant opening up of the trading world for the India. What has been the impact of oil supply disruptions and sharp rise in fuel cost? Well, economically, it has affected our current account deficit. Okay, we have passed on. The government has passed on some amount of price range into the consumer market very moderately. They have not. The government has absorbed the shock, and there's a basis why the government has absorbed the shock. But earlier, when the price of oil fell from 75 dollars to barrel to 65 or something like that, or 85 to 75, 65, India did not pass on that economic benefit to the consumers. They kept their oil prices, retail prices at constant level. So India had consciously built up this buffer that in event of any further spike, the government would be able to pass on the benefit. It had the reserves. It will not impact its fiscal deficit. Okay, and I will talk about this a little later, but the consumer price impact has been less than 1 to 2%. Now, indeed, now hopefully if the Gulf War really ceases, the oil supply channels do improve, we see a further, that will be a correction point. But if this persists, and if there's a further escalation of war in the future, India will be able to absorb up to $150 a barrel in a temporary scenario. It will affect us, it will affect the economic burden, but can absorb, it will not go, in a sense, belly up. It will not have that situation. India is also building on fuel reserves. We today hold about 2 months of supplies of fuel reserves. 2 or 3 months, I'm not sure. China holds about 3 months. Okay, we are now building another 2-3 months of oil reserves in the UAE, inside the UAE, and through the earlier route map which I showed, which doesn't go to the conflict zone, where ships go directly on land, from sea on land to the UAE and Saudi Arabia, we get our access rate available. So net, there has been an impact as of now, which every other country, but most importantly, we're looking at, as I said earlier, energy independence in the next 5 years. And now from the part B of my presentation on Indian economy, I will quickly run through your macro data, opportunity sectors, what are the challenges, and conclusion, why India for the businesses like yours. India is projected GDP is 4.1 to 4.3 trillion. Because of rupee value crash, India lost its 4th positioning to now the 5th position, is possibly the 5th largest economy in the world. As of now, it is the 5th, but expectations are that by the end of this decade, India will be the 3rd largest, beating Germany and Japan, and will claim the 3rd largest peak in terms of the size of economy, GDP nominal size. Important to note is that under PPP, under purchasing power parity, India is already the 3rd largest economy in the world. In other words, Indian market and equally though it's huge in terms of domestic demand. We're talking about $17 to $19 trillion in 2026 under purchasing power parity, and that's really the yardstick when you look at what is the Indian market as an opportunity to the rest of the world. I will quickly take you to the next slide, just to show what is the composition. With data there, but I focus on 2-3 points. The important thing here is to note that India, despite its growth, despite a $4.5 trillion size economy, despite a growth of 6-7% projected in the future, and in the past nearly double digits sometimes, we are still largely an agricultural economy. We are still, dependency on agriculture is still high. Our manufacturing dependency is only 16 to 17% versus China's 26 to 27%. So manufacturing sector is now mapping up. The government has brought a lot of policy initiatives, a fair amount of policy initiatives to improve manufacturing and improve Make in India. So the other important thing to be noted is that what is driving our economy. Okay, before I go to the drivers, I'm just go back, sorry. So one of the key important driving factors in the Indian economy has been the domestic consumption. Unlike the China model, which was built on the global demand, India's expansion, economic growth is built on the domestic demand. A purchasing power parity of about 17 to 19 trillion dollars, 140 billion people. The aspirational class is moving from really rapid rise in middle class, moving upwards. Okay, so that's really the key driver of the domestic economy. And if you can feel that and fuel that growth, is where the growth is going to come from. Expectations are for the next 30 years, I would emphasize, that this demographic dividend India is going to harness. 75% of our population is below 27 to 30 years of age. And this demographic pattern is not going to change. So we have the workforce, we have the consumption pattern of the young people evident in the economy for the next 30 years. And that's where the growth opportunities for all kinds of businesses will happen. I now come to the next slide on what is the foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investments, as you all know, is actually displays the confidence of foreign investors in the foreign market they invest in. So that's called the FDI. In 2026, the 75 to 80 billion expected to reach 120 to 130 billion in the next 4 years. We were 5 years ago not below 50 billion before five years ago. This is suggesting a rising confidence, the growth of the foreign businesses in the Indian opportunity. Which are the sectors, on the right and the mid side you'll see, which are the sectors which are gaining momentum? Largely it is the automotive, renewable, construction and infrastructure. What is causing the drivers? Because the consumption, what is causing the one of the major contributing factor to the rising consumption is the digitalization of India. India is the largest country in terms of number of digitalization transactions that are happening day in and day out. Not China, not the US, it's India. The largest value of e-commerce is happening in India. So this has become, those of you familiar with India, it's a shocking trail when you have the poor people living in the villages. Some people will come and knock on your door, in a car door, asking for, begging for some food or money. Immediately they do it, they'll give you a Google Pay or Indian UPI system to pay them 1 rupee, 2 rupees to micro cents, and thus seamlessly the transaction happens through them. A situation like a mineral water which is sourced and has 10 levels chains of distribution to the final consumer, instantly through our digitalization, the money goes all the way back to the manufacturer. Each one, the middleman parking his profits, and in the velocity of money, which is scarce in India, is really substantially improving, causing the huge inertia in the economy. Renewables energy is another area which I talked about. In India surely wants to migrate itself or reduces energy, increases energy independence, and solar and hydroelectric are very big powers. So that's another opportunity sector where a lot of FDI is coming in. Export growth has grown rampantly. 2013 to 2000, last 10 years, you've seen 80% increase. And this is basically, but having said that, the last 10 years reflect much of the increase happening in the IT services followed by engineering groups. Next 10 years will be a different model. You'll see the graphs flipping around in terms of the growth that is being projected. It will be more engineering and manufacturing and less of IT services. Next one, please. What have been the drivers of the domestic economy? The major drivers in the economy have been the domestic consumption, which I talked about, Then the investment capex by the government. Government stepped in, last 5 years, government stepped in where private capital was short. It's building in highways, roads, ports, airports, the works. Infrastructure, India was woeful in infrastructure. Francesca and I have been going to Bombay to Pune over 5 hours. It now takes me 2 hours. And it's mind-blowing the changes taking place in the hinterland. We're going to have, the next 5 years, we're going to have bullet trains operating as seamlessly as they operate in China. We're going to travel from Delhi to northeast of Assam, northeast territories of Assam in 4 hours. 3,000 kilometers will be traversed at 300 kilometers an hour or 400 kilometers an hour. That's the plan. Next 5 years, we'll see the visibility. Delhi to Pune, when the bullet trains happened, what today is taken 5 years, 2 hours, what took us 5 hours, next by 2030 it will be 48 minutes from my house to my destination. So that's really the capex change that the government is impacting. Second thing is on the digital. I talked about digitalization as which is a changing impact, and the last of these is the export orientation. Where is the export orientation happening? Well, one sector I will identify to you is the defense. 5 years ago, we were zero exports in defense. Today, we are doing $3 billion of about $4 to $4.5 billion of export. 5 years, zero. Next 5 years, they're projected to be $15 billion. Now, when defense moves in that, and exports, I'm not talking about domestic consumption, exports. We're exporting from missiles, aircrafts, spares, ammunition, you name it. You name it, in the next 5 years. That transformation means what? It's a transformation to the local domestic industry. Because defense is the highest in quality standards, highest in ensure for sustainability of your manufacturing processes. And if that happens, the tertiary effect in the manufacturing sector is going to be gigantic. So I talked about reduction of defense in the foreign countries, energy security, and the full impact of this will be seen in the next 3 to 5 years. I covered these points. But the other important factor to be seen is, 5 years ago, Indian banking system was crippled with non-performing assets. Okay, they had no headroom to lend. Regulatory changes, enforcement of attachment of properties, of defaulting borrowers, rampant cleaning up the balance sheets of the banks. Today, the credit expansion, you ask for a demand and the banks are after you to lend money as long as the project shows viability. So today, money availability from a debt point of view, working capital supply point of view is not an issue at all. There's enough number of private equity players in the country from all private equity clubs. There's enough from family offices, domestic family offices have stepped in. Last 5 years, they were not seen off. Okay, a few here and there were there today, just about, I think there are over 100 family offices operating and taking stakes in right from startup innovation stage to mature businesses. The investment scene has completely changed in terms of its local environment. I now come to the opportunity sectors. Okay, which are the real opportunity sectors from the businesses? I talked about infrastructure, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, this still poses, if any of you are directly connected with the infrastructure or indirectly connected to infrastructure, massive opportunity because the growth is among us. 100 ports, 100 new airports, 10,000 kilometers of highways per year. Nowhere done in the world at this point in time. Ports are getting investment of about 15 billion, 5 new ports and about 100 new small ports all around the coast. The east coast and the west coast of India. India is moving away from on the road, on the rail transportation to along the coast transportation. Renewable energy, talked about 500 gigawatts of non-fossil energy is going to be created. The economic opportunity in this renewable sector is about $1 trillion by 2030. $1 trillion economic opportunity, delta opportunity. The sectors that have opened up, space. India is launching United States satellites into the space. We are doing it at the cost of, as somebody joked, at the cost of a hamburger. Or US comparison. Yes, that's the kind of a thing. We are actually launching the satellites of most of the developed world, India is launching their satellites. They're satellites in the space. Space energy sector has been opened up to private sector. Defense, as I talked about, 65% of the manufacturing now in defense, more locally manufactured. Okay. Massive opportunity in the defense and related products. India is today exporting ammunition, hardware, software, AI intelligence, you name it, across the bandwidth, missiles. We're not there in the fighter planes area. We are dependent on the fighter plane area, but just about everything, other than the aviation, we're just doing everything in the defense. Shipbuilding is the one of the massive one, it is causing an opportunity because India is now building 20, we want to get up into the shipbuilding area and be self-dependent on that. Digital structure, I talked about artificial intelligence. India is in the top 3 countries in the world, bringing manufacturing processes with artificial intelligence. Agriculture, moving from non-food cash crops, food processing is presenting a very good opportunity in the area. Urbanization, if you're connected with domestic interiors, planning, designing, 100 new smart cities that will be set up, 30 of them are already on the go. Semiconductors, next one please, is again India is moving in with Netherlands, Japan, and United States and Taiwan. Just a month ago we did a lithography technology transfer from Netherlands to India, which is a critical success in the semiconductor industry. Nuclear energy, talked about small nuclear reactors. Anything that you want to do with small peripheral side. Reactors are big, mostly produced in Germany or in North Europe, I'm not sure. But anything to do with the ancillarization is a mind-blowing opportunity that is happening here. In summary, this is the sectors that we'll talk about. I'll just mention defense, auto components for OEMs and hybrid EVs, renewable energy, and shipbuilding are the most prominent sectors where the growth is happening. What are the challenges? You all have done. We talked about all supply challenges, disruptions. These are the high-level challenges, and India is making, in the next 5 years, India will be self-sufficient. Fertilizer supply also is a moderately high challenge, but we can handle it through a supply line coming in from diversified sourcing coming from Canada, Russia, and other sources. Fiscal deficit is a challenge caused by the recent current account deficit outburst, but that India is still on the right trajectory thing. Skilled manpower is a challenge, and we have given solutions. We are directly taking up businesses to the engineering colleges so that you get the skilled manpower to your requirements and you will train at a very low cost. Red tapeism, yes, it is there. I don't know, it has sharply reduced. It will take us 5 months to set up a company, it takes 5 days now, but still, in a lot of the processes there, as red tapeism is limited. My last slide, why India? Fastest growing economy in the world, as per World Bank and IMF recognition. India growth is fostering the growth of the global economy. Massive domestic market, median age is 20 years, providing long-term labor force and expansion. Global India is well positioned to be China, alternative to China, and supply chain diversification. Strong government push for manufacturing and digital public infrastructure. Talent pool of engineering skills is massive, leading to our AI significance and positioning in the world. Last but not the least, India is a stable democratic counterweight in Asia, offering you a good market, a thread of robust opportunity and stability, both economic, political, and social stability. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Un intervento completo che vi dà una dimensione delle opportunità, e dopo tanti anni di India posso dire che le sto vedendo con i miei occhi. Il cambiamento c'è, i primi 10 anni di esperienza in India, questi cambiamenti, come ho detto fin dall'inizio, erano molto lenti, molti grandi annunci, poca concretezza. Io oggi sto vedendo la mia città Bombay trasformarsi in modo radicale. Negli ultimi 5 anni le infrastrutture che erano state promesse ci sono, è attivo il secondo aeroporto costruito in meno di 3 anni, la Coastal Road c'è, stanno decongestionando il traffico di moltissime aree, 3 linee metropolitane. Sicuramente c'è una parte di affetto per questa città personale, ma i cambiamenti ci sono reali, sono tangibili e finalmente sta succedendo il cambiamento, quindi mi sento di appoggiare l'entusiasmo e l'affetto che Girish riesce a trasmettere quando parla di numeri che possono essere magari noiosi, ma sottostante c'è del contenuto.